Hello and welcome to this week's WVD Community Podcast. My name is Neil McLaughlin. With us we have Stefan Georgiev, who's kindly joined us today on his holiday. So yep. Thank you, Stefan. We love your background. And also with us we have Stefan Georgiev, who is the product manager for Microsoft for MSIX App Attach. So welcome,
That's
Stefan.
Correct. Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
Good. And this is your very first podcast, I believe.
Ever period
Wow.
in my career. So yeah, really excited to be here and just kind of see how everything goes.
Good. So do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So like you mentioned, Neil, my name is Stefan Georgiev. I'm originally from Bulgaria. I moved to the States about 13 years ago. Did a short stint working as a bartender in a casino. It was actually a casino owned by Mr. Trump, our current president. I don't know if that's good or bad. And then at one point I decided I'm going to go back into IT. And I was part of a startup in Washington, DC. And about 2 years into that, Microsoft recruited me. That was 7 years ago. And I made a simple mistake where there's a Redmond in Qualls in Virginia, and I think I'm going there to work, but no, it was Redmond, Washington State. So you can imagine my surprise when they sent me an airplane ticket and said, like, you need to fly over here. So yeah, by accident, I ended up in Microsoft, spent about 2 years in Bing, and then I decided I need something more technical. And about 3 years ago, it will be 3 years in exactly 8 days. I spoke to Scott Manchester, the former lead for WVD. He was like, I like your energy, you know nothing about WVD, but you're welcome to join the team. And that was actually, it shows how good Scott is, but it was actually right at the time when the team was moving away from RDS and starting to develop WVD. And back then was actually called RDMI, for those of you that were used to deal with that remote desktop modern infrastructure. And I was one of the first people to actually deploy what was the precursor of WVD as a service in my subscription. So back then the plan was everybody will be deploying their own instance of the service. And then we got smacked around and we were told, no, it has to be a service run by Microsoft. And the rest is history. When I joined initially, WVD, that's another interesting story there. The area that I took over was user profile disks, UPD. And I was told by Scott, you need to be the expert on UPD and profiles. And I spent the next 6 months learning everything that I can about UPD. And then everybody that I talked about was like, FSLogix, we'll see what FSLogix are doing. You got to do the same. I'm like, okay, that's easy. You know, how is it? And then I did all the research, went to my dev lead, asked him, how long is it going to take me for this wonder list of features to complete? And he's like 10 years. That was just to get parity with what FSLogix had at that point. And I'm like, what about, like, I know it's Microsoft, right? Supposedly they had all this money. We have all this money. I'm like, okay, so what are the alternatives? Because we'll never get that. And then Scott was like, do you want to buy them? And I'm like, sure, that'll save my problem. And fast forward about 1.5 years later, as you probably all know, FSLogix joined Microsoft. And I ended up reporting to Randy,
wow,
who was the CTO of FSLogix.
So you are the person responsible.
Well, I like to think so, but I'm pretty sure that everybody that was part of that deal will say the same answer. So,
but you started it.
Yeah, I mean, I did the technical evaluation, and I remember showing the slide to Scott and to the leadership of our organizations, Cosine Sigma, telling them that that is the path. And I did the demo to them with OneDrive working and Outlook working. And so it was, I started it, so to speak. Yeah, I can take that credit, yeah.
That's a cool story. So, yeah. I know, I mean, I remember when that accusation happened, and it was a very, 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 very good move by Microsoft. Very good thing. So, I mean, I was told that that product was bought specifically for WVD.
Yes, that is true.
Is that true? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We just needed, I mean, historically, we knew that UPD was not where it needs to be.
Yeah.
And actually the very first versions of RDMI, they were with UPD. And it was just not gonna work. It was not gonna scale. And where we were aiming with like the MVP back then for RDMI, it was just gonna be very difficult to have the success, well, somewhat arbitrarily stated, but looking backwards kind of retrospectively, it would be very difficult to have the success we had if we didn't have FSLogix.
Yeah.
Because then one drive is not working, that was a big thing. You wouldn't have Outlook, although despite that later on we did a lot of investment into the whole office space to improve the office products for WVD. But we also, like, there are other things that came from that, just from acquiring Randy and his team and the talent that came on board. So actually, Randy was the one of the kind of, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say that, but if I get in trouble, I get in trouble. So it was Randy back in 2018 when we were first going into this whole acquisition, that we were told him like, oh, by the way, when you come on board, you have to come up with an application layering solution for WVD. And he was like, I have something in mind. And at that point, he did a very early demo of what later will be known as MSIX App Attach, which is the feature that I'm currently working on.
Nice.
Cool.
Yes. But yeah, no FSLogix, likely no WVD.
Yeah, I mean, I've come from a Citrix background, and I remember when I first sort of discovered FSLogix, and it was kind of these light bulb moments, because all these problems that all the Citrix admins have been having, it just fixed them all.
Yes, yes,
So,
indeed.
Yeah. Great product, great acquisition. Yeah,
Using OneDrive, Outlook OST, caching of Outlook.
Yeah.
It fixes all those things.
Yeah, I mean, I've deployed it in a few environments. Well, sorry, not few environments, every single environment I've deployed now. And FSLogix is standard, isn't it? I think that's pretty much the same across the world now, because obviously it's included as part of your licensing. So
yeah, that was a big win that Randy Cook, who was the CTO of FSLogix, he actually spent the first 9 months of his career in Microsoft trying to convince all the leadership of different teams and different organizations to make sure that is the story. So we should all, he doesn't drink alcohol, but we should buy him a beverage of choice whenever we see him, because he won that battle for to be free for everybody.
So, Stefan, and currently you are a product manager for WVD.
Mhm.
And so last week, 2 weeks ago, we spoke with Peter Wickleven, also a product manager of WVD. So we know from Peter that he is responsible for like the Windows 10, Windows 10 multi-user, the OS part. Can you tell us something about your
Yes, absolutely.
and where you guys are focusing on?
So actually, I am part of Peter's team. He's right now my direct manager. And the team that we are part of, it's called the OSA, Operating System and Applications. So the whole team kind of focuses on everything that happens once you click that deploy button in the Azure portal to create the VM. So what runs into that in that VM, the operating system, the applications, the profiles, Office, OneDrive. This is what our team owns. And there are other teams in our sister teams or brother teams that they own the clients and the protocol. There's a team that owns the service itself, the WVD service. And there is kind of like this fourth team that focuses on monitoring, optimization. So yeah, my team, like I said, operating system and application, which makes a lot of sense to me because also in Bulgarian means WASP. So it's easy to remember. So we're all this guy that make all the noise. One good thing about our team is that we rarely work with the WVD developers. We always work with external teams. For example, Windows 10 multi-session when we needed to fix something with, let's say, the login process. It's quite often we have to reach out to other teams. So when I go into my mailbox, 90% of my communication is with external to the WVD team. So I work with the file system team. I work with the developer enablement platform team for MSIX App Attach. I work with Azure Files, with Office. And these are kind of the areas that I own in WVD. Making sure that applications can run, making sure that profiles can be stored on Azure files or whatever else is there, but we prefer Azure files. Making sure that Office is running fine. So if you have issues with Office running in WVD, talk to me. These are kind of my areas of expertise. The last 3 months, it's been like 80% MSIX App Attach heavy, because that is the feature that we are trying to ship by the end of the year. Yeah, that's kind of like what I do. Happy to jump into more details on the PM position in Microsoft and what it entitles if that's of interest.
Cool. Nice.
So, end of the year, did you just say?
What did I say, by end of year?
Yeah.
Something? Yeah, that's the plan. So I know that this has been of interest, and I get asked many times on one of my hidden, besides being the first time I'm on a podcast, but also one of my hidden wins for me is that if I can put this out there, less people will ask me directly in email. So we have a roadmap for MSIX App Attach in WVD. So let me first clarify that statement. So there is MSIX App Attach, which is a technology that can work in and outside of WVD, right? And we have had a preview going on for MSIX App Attach since about November last year.
Yep.
That is preview of MSIX App Attach. It has nothing to do with WVD. You can run it in WVD, you can run it on premises, RDS, you name it, whatever you want. What we are trying to do right now, especially the portal, the WVD ARM portal is live. We want to integrate the management layer for MSIX App Attach into the WVD portal, so you don't have to ever touch PowerShell. Don't get me wrong, I love PowerShell. I can spend my career doing PowerShell if I can, but it's not what people want. They want the UI, they want the flexibility, they want the scalability of a UI. So starting June 1st, we finally were able to obtain some developers. So Microsoft, despite being a big organization, there's always challenges with resources and what prioritization. And I was able to receive developer heads to, that sounds wrong. There was
resources.
Yeah, I received some resources that were allocated for working on MSIX App Attach. And while they're all very experienced engineers, they were net new to the whole virtualized space. So they didn't know what WVD is, what virtualization is. When you told them like a session host, they'll give you this like strange look and like, what you're talking about. So we spent the first month and a half of ramping the developers from zero to being experts in WVD. And we literally started coding on 7.15, where we are integrating, again, MSIX App Attach in WVD. So our timeline is right now, we are trying to complete all our P0s, which is our MVP product, meaning like you will be able to go into the portal and set up MSIX App Attach. The coding, right? Let me be clear, the coding only. That doesn't mean it's ready, but the P0s will be completed by September 15th. At that point, it depends on the quality. Again, it depends on the quality. We may or may not have a public preview. Now, if worst case scenario, let's say that we do have some other work to complete. We do have to deal with some integration. Our goal is 10:15 to have announcement for when the public preview will start. Sorry, the private preview will start. That means I'll be, since it's my feature, I'll be inviting customers to participate in the MSIX App Attach preview. Then it's KPI driven, meaning key performance indicators. There's certain amount of reliability has to be there. We can't ship something that works 20% of the time. We can't ship something that works 80% of the time. Can't ship something that works 90% of the time. Has to be 99% of the time and higher. So from that perspective, we have work to do around the integration and reliability, because completing the P0s doesn't mean it's ready. And the promise to my leadership was that I'm going to ship this by end of year. And since I don't want to ship in December, because like, guess what, December holidays, most people are not there. Well, they're somewhere else, but not at work, right?
Yep.
My goal is to have that before beginning of December. Does that give you enough on the roadmap?
Yes. I wasn't aware of all that. So, so essentially what we're saying is we're going to be able to go to the portal and select what applications are available within our WVD session, right?
Yeah, so let me kind of walk you through the user experience, like the admin experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're the IT admin, and you go and you type azureportal.com, and then you go into your MSX. Sorry, you go into the WVD screen, blade, whatever you want to call it. Technically, it's a blade. And from there, when you select the host pool, you will see a tab on the left-hand side that says MSX packages. So in MSX packages, this is the place where you go, and for this host pool, you will be able to point it and say, like, for this host pool, I want to potentially publish to my users the packages that I'm going to upload. So you have already set up a file share similar to the FSLogix. In that file share, you have provided the expanded MSX packages. And then from the UI, you will make the WVD service aware that for this host pool, you're selecting package 1, 2, and 3.
So are they native MSX packages, or have they been converted for MSX App Attach?
Let's address that. So they are native MSX packages. So an MSX package itself, it's a zip file, okay? So actually, if you take .msx, you rename it to .zip, you are able to expand it. So the expansion is only this, like we are not changing the application, we are not repackaging it, we are just putting it in outside of the zip file, so we don't have to pay the penalty of zipping it when the user wants to use it, okay? Which you actually, if you run them side by side, the regular installer and MSIX App Attach, this is where the penalty, most of the penalty comes from, is from that on-demand unzipping. So we're keeping it in what's called the loose file format, but also we want to put it in a VHD, and this is one of the lessons from FSLogix, is to mount a VHD is one IOP. To mount an application that has, to access 1,000 files, that is like originally one application, if you don't put them in a VHD, that's 1,000 IOPS, right? So that's why you put it in a VHD. It's all about serving the performance. So if you want to achieve that good performance, you want to be in the expanded format. And you're like, you know what? Everybody loves performance. Nobody wants to sit around and wait. So we'll have that requirement for the admin one-time operation to expand their MSX into an MSIX App Attach, okay? It's not a new format. It's just really you're unzipping, you're expanding the package.
To the VHDX.
Yeah. VHDX or VHD, and potentially we can talk about the SIM, which is the new format, the new file system format. So once you have those packages in a file share, you go into the portal, you go into WVD, you go into the MSX packages, you've selected what packages. Now, this doesn't mean that the packages are automatically available to your users, right? The same way how today, if you're assigning a remote application, you don't automatically give all the applications that are on the virtual machine to the user. We have the capability to select from those packages. I want to assign just particular of them, like subset, to different application groups. So then you go into the application groups, and you know, like today, when you go into the application group level, you have the tab that says applications. In that tab, we will expose the capability to, you know, when you click there, today it says like file path or start menu. We'll add the capability there, and there will be source, and we'll say MSIX package. So when you click on the MSIX package, it will list you all the packages you earlier made WVD aware that are there. You select the one that you want. You assign it, and you have the same capability of modifying the icon, etc. And once that is done, the assignment doesn't change. It's still the same flow, like what users got assigned to the app group. And then you're done. User comes in, and then the application is just there. And that's one of the weird things that it's very difficult to explain to people. There's no way to demo MSIX App Attach end user experience, because the end user cannot tell the difference between an MSIX App Attach application and a regular application.
The application is available or isn't available.
Exactly, yeah. And the beauty is that it's available in seconds, right? Well, less than a second when we do the MSIX App Attach.
And it's just mounting the VHD, deploying the application, and all the users can use the same VHD for the same application, right?
Yes, and it's not all the users can use it. So just one clarification. mounting so when you do MSIX App Attach, you have the mounting, aka staging, which tells the operating system, I have this application available for you if you need it, right? And then actually you can even unmount the VHD, it will still work, right? So the VHD is just needed at one time to tell the operating system, be aware that these things are here. And then you can have on the same machine, like the three of us can be on the same machine. And you can say, okay, Neil, you get Notepad, Stefan G, you get Office, Stefan D, you get Visual Studio Code, and you get only that application on that machine. I'm not going to be able to see Notepad because it's not being registered to me. So that's the level of granularity that we get with MSIX App Attach.
So you do it on a per user basis.
Yes, it's per user, and there's no way you can start the application if it hasn't been explicitly registered for you by the configuration that your admin has set up.
That's cool.
Which is the killer feature. One of the killer features of MSIX App Attach is that functionality. Like you don't have to use the host pool as the isolation level between the different workloads that you have in your environment.
Cool. Cool. I'm very impressed that this is the next step for MSIX App Attach in combination with WVD. Yep. Because currently, well, since 2004, it's fully supportive. If it's supported, you don't have to do anything on your OS to get it working, but you still got all those scripts and GPOs to get it working for staging, for attaching the VHD, for assigning it. And well, what you will see right now is that all those users, all those administrators which are deploying WVD, it's the ease of the ARM portal. So you can just create a host pool, you can create your workspace, and well, in the future, well, this year, you can even assign those applications via the same portal in the same manner to your users, and they can get using their applications and streaming their applications from that VHD file running on Azure Files or NetApp or whatever storage solution you would like. Cool, I'm very impressed. Cool.
We're getting to that nirvana state, aren't we? Because I remember when I was at a conference about a year ago, I was chatting to Jim Moyle about he was sort of obviously getting very excited about WVD. And the way kind of he described it is the reason why we should be so excited is you've got complete separation of all these components. And when you've got that complete separation, it makes everything so much easier to manage, right? Because your profile separate, your application separate, your operating system separate. So, you know, when you're doing an upgrade of a customer, it's always a pain to do all those things. Oh, it's just going to work on this. We need to migrate the profiles onto this new platform. We need to make sure the applications work. In this state, we don't have to do that anymore, right? Because we can just rip out the underlying operating system. The apps we know it'll work.
Absolutely.
You can just swap the OS. You can just remove it and replace it with an updated one.
Yeah.
And your users will get the same settings, just same profiles.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your application.
That's been like kind of like we can blame Randy for that. It was kind of his hidden vision to, and I have it actually. I have this deck that's about 150 pages that has everything about MSIX App Attach. And the very first slide of that deck is a picture of a very appetizing looking pancake stack, because that's exactly what we are building. It's a stack that's totally separated from each other. And that's why MSIX was such a, when it fell into our laps, we were like, it can't be true, because it's a file format that is fully segregated from the operating system and the profile. Like if something is in MSIX, it doesn't leave anything behind, which is something that, to my knowledge, there's no other file format that can promise that, or other application learning solution that can promise that. There's always something left somewhere. And with the MSIX, we have the telemetry. We are, I forgot, it was like 99.99% successful uninstall rate with nothing left behind. So it's going to be pretty exciting. And you know, like this is like right now the short-term future. Yeah, we're just going to get in the ARM portal, and it's not that many MSIX applications out there, right? Because you have to still have this pain point of converting to MSIX.
Yeah.
But in like 4 to 5 years, when the vendors themselves start adopting MSIX en masse, you will forget that you ever had to repackage an application.
Yeah.
Right?
So at this moment, are there already vendors which are leveraging the MSIX
Yes.
format?
Yeah, absolutely. There are not as many as we want them, right? But there are. So Adobe Fireworks is an MSIX already. iTunes is an MSIX. Slack is an MSIX. There's more and more coming on board. The whole MSIX, the whole Microsoft Store is MSIXs in the back end. Yes, there are many. It's not as many as we want them again. And that's one side of the question. That the other one is, how about those legacy applications? How many of them can you get to MSIX the easy way, right? And that's going to be the longer term roadmap, where we, Microsoft, with our ISV partners, with the packaging tool, with the developer community, we need to add more and more incentive for those applications to migrate in MSIX. And that is like the shorter term future. MSIX is one format to rule them all. It can work on-prem, it can work in WVD, it can work in RDS. And it's not that like you need to repackage, or you can even work on your physical device, right? Your laptop uses MSIXs today if you want, if you found the application. So eventually, in the in not that distant future, we'll have MSIX to be for all possible compute styles, virtual, physical, on-prem, in Azure, in other clouds. MSIX will be why not? Like, your addressable space as a developer becomes so large. And on top of that, we are doing things with like integrating with MEM. So eventually you'll be able to do MSIX App Attach from MEM. So if you're already using it on-prem and you have a WVD environment, and we will get to the point where MEM supports WVD, why even bother? Like, you have one management layer for everything in your organization, one package, one management layer.
One package source which you can distribute to WVD, your on-prem, your clients, even Intune, for example.
Yeah.
Cool.
I know there's a lot of companies out there as well who are starting to sort of release stuff which they can use to convert an existing package to MSIX as well. So I think that's going to be a very popular migration path that users could go along. Yeah,
so if I can kind of give an insight into that journey, because I've been there pretty much since day 2, let's say. So we have the guys that own the tooling, like Flexera and Advanced Installer. They already support 2 MSIX. So if you are the developer and you have the source code today and you haven't packaged in MSIX, it's like go get that extra Red Bull can and go do it. It takes like 5 minutes. And we have all the tooling, like we'll tell you what's wrong, we'll tell you how to fix it with just the tools are there to get your application. Now, what is happening is with MSIX, with all the promises of MSIX, with the WVD, with the growth of remote work due to the current world state, more and more what I call like IT professional tools allow you to now take your legacy application, whatever it is, and convert it to MSIX. Plus, fix some of the app compat issues, right? And there are a plethora, like Liquidware, Raimo, App2Cure. There's so many. I can't like even mention. Like I have 3 emails in my mailbox waiting for me to review new partners joining the WVD program for application compat. On top of that, we are adding new feature to the MSIX format itself. So our promise a long time ago was that MSIX will have all the features that AppV has, or very close to it. So when we get that and you're on AppV, you should move away from AppV and move to MSIX, right? Definitely. When we get to that point. But yeah, it's been surprisingly how well it's picking up. We'll see how it goes.
So, but from my understanding with AppV, when you are creating packages with AppV, it's always a lot of issues with all those integrations with context menus and stuff. Is it the same with MSIX, or?
It's slightly easier. Well, we don't. The answer is honestly depends. If I may quote one of the AppV MVP experts, know your installer. The answer is depends. Like there are applications even with plugins, which is kind of right now is I would say this bad word, the bane of the existence of MSIX App Attach and MSIX, is because we don't really well support plugins. But there are certain newer plugins, some newer technologies of plugins that just work fine. Now, if you're having some of those older legacy like COM object DLL injection type of plugins, they would not work well enough with MSIX App Attach or MSIX. And from that perspective, again, is know your installer. So just recently, and that's kind of one of the, for me, I keep this in my head, this list of like, what's the largest applications we converted to MSIX? What's the most amount of applications that the enterprise was able to attach? So we were recently, with some help with the App Assure team, we were able to convert this 8 GB plugin heavy legacy executable application to an MSIX, and then we had a lot of issues with like context menu. And actually we had the functionality in MSIX to fix that. It was just you had to point it manually to the DLL via the config JSON. Well, it's not the best story. We will get better at that, right?
Cool. Cool.
And with AppV, again, our goal is that eventually we will have full parity with AppV, and we'll make things easier for customers, so they don't have to deal with what you just mentioned, Stefan.
Nice. Great things ahead with MSIX.
I think there's great things ahead with everything with WVD. I think I just keep on thinking to myself, what's next? I mean, after we've done the App Attach thing, a lot of people wait for what's. Do you know what's next?
I can answer it from my own perspective. What's next? I cannot speak for the wider team. That's probably something like Peter would have given you a better answer, but I would really like to see being able with maybe some extra magic sauce from our developers in Microsoft, being able to get using MSIX and FSLogix, and again that extra magic sauce to be able to get like a session migration.
Yeah.
Right. that will be the.
So we just talked about the picture of all those pancakes. That would be the cherry on top.
Yes.
So yeah. What you are saying is migrating live sessions from one host to another.
Yeah. And yeah, that'll be the holy grail of virtualization, if you're able to get that. And potentially also, once we get the live session migration, my kind of like we were talking with Randy in the past around, what if you like you have your physical device, you're working on something, you close it, you go home, you open your virtual device through your iPad or like some other like device, and you log into your WVD session, and the same whatever left on your physical device is there, because we were just not only roaming it like from one VM to another, but we roam it across devices.
Yeah.
And I think in my head we have all the pieces. We're just missing some of the mortar in between to get them to fit together.
Do you know if that's something which Microsoft are actively working on, or is it just a thought in your head at the moment?
I know we are researching it right now. We're heavily researching it for sure. Yeah, we're looking into the different container technology, because there's a plethora of those, and then it really depends what you mean when you say container, because everything today is container, right? But yeah, we're definitely looking into that. We're early on into looking into like what it's needed to be able to achieve that. And again, the ugly head of business efficiency, what the customer wants versus what we can give them today. So just about like a month ago, I was talking with somebody that was looking into that, and they're like, Yeah, but if we get a very nice scaling, that's a feature that the team is working on, like dynamic scaling, we're able to turn on your machine and you're very flexible and this and that, you can like solve it for 80% of the people. And I'm like, sure, like, but why not? Like, if you can do it, why we don't do it? Right?
Yeah.
Migrate the memory state, migrate the profile, migrate the applications, you're done. What more do you need?
Yeah, I mean, you ask any IT professional what got them into virtualization, and a lot of them will probably say, well, when they first saw a vMotion migration in VMware.
Yeah.
If we could do the user session migration, that'll be the same story.
Yeah. So yeah, we are working, but again, research phase, right? Right now we're researching some POCs. Like I built a little POC myself with my crummy PowerShell skills. I'm not gonna show it to anybody, but I was able to get like 90% there. I just couldn't get the applications to open in the exactly same order and same location on the screen as they were on the previous session.
Yeah.
But like the memory state was there. Like you had your Word open halfway and it was there.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's really impressive.
So surely if you can do it on your own.
If I can do it, people like developers in Microsoft, which is much smarter than I am, they'll be able to figure it out. Yeah. I'm just a PM. I just not even a good coder anymore.
You do sound quite technical though. So do you like to sort of do coding in the background, or do that for your primary job function, or?
Actually, like when I started in Bulgaria, like first like 6 years of my career, I was a developer.
Okay.
And then in the startup, being the nature of a startup, you code as much as you can.
Yeah.
Then the moment my manager told me that I need to leave Bing was when I wrote this machine learning piece to analyze the feedback from customers. And he was like, you have way too many skills to be a business PM in Bing Ads. You need to go to be an engineer.
Okay.
And I can code decently well, or at least I think so, until somebody reviews my code. Yeah. I do definitely enjoy the technical side of a PM, and I like the freedom when you're a PM to select how much you want to deal with features and PM work, what one of my mentors calls herding the cats, and the amount of technical work that you want to do.
So you can essentially either get someone else to do the task for you, or if you want to do it, you can just get your feet stuck in and start working on it, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And
awesome.
I think you mentioned earlier that in our preparation for this that you've already talked about the WVD Quick Start.
Yep. That's what we. Yeah.
So actually, that was an idea that I had for about like a year and a half, almost 2 years. Never found the time to work it, and then Peter came to me about 4 months ago and said, like, you're gonna get this intern. Do you have a fun project for him? I'm like, I do have fun project. So while Sam, that's the intern, did like 80% of the work, like some of the more I helped, right, with the coding, and so I like to do that. Yeah, absolutely. It's part of what got me into IT.
So when we're talking about the WVD Quick Start, so Peter Wegleven mentioned it like 2 weeks ago in the previous podcast that we should look into it, and I think a week later, Sam and also you and Peter announced it publicly. Can you tell our listeners something about the WVD Quick Start? So, why is it, and what is the goal of it?
Yeah, so the goal of WVD Quick Start is, let's step back a little bit. So ARM, the way you provision a resource in the Azure is via ARM. The ARM validation component to me is severely lacking. Like you wouldn't do a simple checkup or say like your password is wrong before it goes and makes you wait for 90 minutes to provision the 2 VMs to tell you, oh, your password was wrong. And it doesn't even tell you that your password was wrong, and goes and throws you some like cryptic error message. And so that's one problem. And then the other problem is that WVD actually plays on top of like 4 or 5 other core technologies like Azure, OS, Active Directory identity management, Azure storage with profiles. And if you are somebody like us that breathes and lives virtualization, you know how to handle these things. But if you are somebody that has somewhat limited Azure experience, limited virtualization experience, and you want to try WVD, what do you do? You go open our documentation, and the first thing it tells you, like, you need a tenant, and you do need a domain controller, and you're like, what? What is that? Like, how do I get? Like, how do I even get to start this to figure out what's the hello world for WVD? The hello world is like 20 pages of documents later, right? And that is luckily if you don't mess up your credentials. And so the idea of WVD Quick Start was make it really, when we say 3 clicks, it's 3 clicks. It takes 3 clicks to, well, it depends. If you're counting opening the browser, it might be 5, okay? But open the browser, go to WVD Quick Start, quick deploy to Azure, and then you have to enter only 7 fields. 4 of them are like your domain name, like whatever your domain name is, your domain account your global admin for Azure. If you don't have a domain controller, we'll create one for you and we'll give you the credentials. If you have one, we'll just detect it and say, oh, you have a domain controller, give us the password. And then it's obviously the location, the resource group. You click deploy, and then the first 5 minutes of the run, we're actually validating your input, making sure that your VNet is correctly set up, which is like the biggest, like 60% of the errors in deploying WVD today is because people don't understand, which I totally get it why they don't. It's confusing. We give you the option to create a VNet, and you create a VNet, but that VNet doesn't see your domain controller, right? So domain join fails, then the whole thing fails. So we check that, we check your firewall, we check your credentials for Azure, for the domain controller. So actually, literally, we go in the background, we try to connect to Azure, and we see what error we return. And if you return an error, then we tell you, oh, your password is wrong. It's not some like ARM template failed, go read the documentation that makes no sense of it, right? And if somebody from Azure ARM is listening to this podcast and has problems with what I'm saying, please come talk to me because I want to fix that thing. ARM errors are useless.
Yeah.
100% agree with you on that one.
So we do all that, and once we validate it, and so far the validation has been very good. Like we are capturing our success rate with. So guess. Let me ask you this question. Guess how much our existing ARM template success rate is? Not the quick start, the existing ones.
I think less than 40%.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, about there, 20 to
30%.
30%. Yeah, 20 to 30 depends on the month, depends on how many people. Care to guess how much is the success rate of WVD Quick Start?
100%.
99.
99. Yeah, 99. Because one of my friends here in Microsoft, he's a PMM. He was trying to use WVD Quick Start, and he kept getting his password wrong. So he tried like 16 deployments.
So he's the 1%, right?
He is the 1%. But that is the idea of WVD Quick Start. It's a very easy way for somebody that's not technical, that only has an Azure subscription, even though they don't even know what's the concept of a domain controller, is to go and get a WVD deployment to go and play with.
Yeah.
All right. And they don't have to understand. So that's like we were talking about how much we like coding. So the WVD Quick Start is a combination of Azure ARM templates, Azure pipelines, DevOps, disaster script configuration, custom scripts extensions, some like fancy API calls in the backend. So you don't have to know anything about that, right? You don't have to know about cloning DevOps pipeline, GitHubs, and anything like that. It all just happens under the covers. All you get is a WVD environment. We even actually create the users for you, and we assign them a remote app on a remote desktop, and we send you an email with the password so you can go and start using it.
I think it's also a good starting point for someone who wants to get involved with us, all that stuff, right? Because I know for me, all that kind of stuff is the biggest plus point for WVD compared to other providers out there. The fact that you can do this all as infrastructure as code if you want to. You don't have to use GUIs, you can just do it all as code if you want to.
Yeah.
So effectively, someone building that environment previous to this quick start, I mean, I've done it myself and looked at what's needed, and it's like, it blows your mind. It's like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. But now you've created something which someone can just take something and look at that code and say, okay, I can modify this in my environment.
Yeah. Well, one of the cool things that were just an example of a problem that we solved, like if you ever try to set up Azure files with FSLogix and WVD today, there was this one script that you have to run that you cannot automate. Like you have to run it on the domain controller. Well, between me and Sam, we were able to figure out how you can do it in an automated fashion. So, and now people can just take that and like run with it. You don't have to go and invent the hot water again.
Yeah, so they can just go and grab that one bit of code from the Quick Start. They don't have to use the Quick Start and do it. You can just pick out bits which you want to do for your own environment, right?
Yeah, and we called out where they can steal that code from. Oh, steal, right? It's all in GitHub. It's public.
Can learn it. Yeah, yeah, but it's all publicly available. So as Neil said, you can just use bits of it and create your own solution, and you don't have to do it all the way. But if you're eager to learn a few parts of it, you can start with literally the Quick Start in deploying, like, what is an ARM template, what does it contain, what can you do with the scripts, what can you do with the ARM templates, and a step further, your pipelines, your releases. Because what the WVD Quick Start in the end will do is it will deploy your WVD environment through Azure DevOps.
Yeah.
That's the thing the WVD Quick Start is doing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think. I mean, I'm very happy internally that I was able to complete that project with, and it's out there. So that's one thing on my checklist. And I just want to see how successful is it, and if it's successful and solving problems for the people, then the next step will be get Microsoft to officially support it. Right. So if you have an issue, you know where to reach out, because right now it's just me. I'm the only support for it. So
okay,
it's not that bad, you know, but it's an extra fun, you know.
You sound like a very, very, very busy man, Stefan.
There's always more work than hours in the day. I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Good.
Cool. A lot of cool stuff this episode.
Very, very, very cool stuff. A lot of stuff that I didn't know about as well. So I'm sure people are going to be very interested to hear.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for sharing all that, Stefan. It's much appreciated.
No problem. That's part of the PM job, part of the flexibility. Get to talk to people about cool stuff.
Yeah, and I will hold you to that release date.
Which one? I didn't say release date.
Very public. Nice, yes, yeah.
And I think
fun.
you got 2 volunteers for the private view of it. So
okay.
if you ever need some help with it.
I think for the MVP community and for those people that have been helping with WVD, kind of like that are on our Teams channel and all that, that won't fit in the 20 customers limit, right? There will be more of a open gates for the MVP community and for members of the WVD community. But let's get to that point, and then the more feedback that we will be able to get, the more eyes on that, the better product we'll get in the end. So collaboration is always welcome.
Do you have many customers out there who are using MSIX App Attach in their production environment?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised how many people are using it today, being just like so actually those scripts that are on the WVD page, I wrote those kind of as like on a dare almost. So I'm surprised that people are actually taking and putting them in their environments and it's working. Yeah. But yeah, it's like we do have customers. We do have customers in WVD and outside of WVD. And actually, I think there's more people outside of WVD right now that are using MSIX App Attach.
Okay.
One thing is, we have telemetry, but honestly, I haven't had the bandwidth to go and explore it in depth, like who and where is using it, because my main, like I mentioned, 80% of my time every week it's going towards ship MSIX App Attach in WVD.
Awesome. Well, I think we've taken up enough of your time. Stefan D, is there anything else we wanted to talk about?
No, it's. I think it's one of the coolest episodes about the MSIX App Attach. It's like you told us about the roadmap, some dates, but we won't keep you with it.
Approximations.
Yeah.
For dates.
It's somewhere this year. but no, and I'm yeah, I think it's very cool that it's the next step in the MSIX App Attach, and I think 1 month ago I did a webinar for Login VSI, and they asked what will be the next step for the App Attach, and I already said that the next step will be the portal integration. So it's very cool to hear that that will be the next thing Microsoft and your team and the WVD team is focusing on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good job. Yeah.
It's the missing piece of the puzzle, isn't it, really? And then you can move on to Azure AD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll end it there, guys. Thanks everyone for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day, Stefan.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.